the food guy is stuck down the street picking up the coffee, right? But it is what it is. It's Toronto. The traffic is crazy and all that good stuff. So first off and foremost, thank you everybody for coming. This is the hardest part for all of us, right? Is just getting people to show up. And for us, when we first started looking at doing these town halls, there was a way bigger purpose for that. It wasn't just to get in here and spread a whole bunch of information and then walk away from here. There's two parts to this. One is we want to give you our perspective, we want to give you our framework and explain why we're looking to do that going forward to not only prevent gang violence, but to prevent kids from joining gangs. But then we wanted to hear back from you to help fill in those gaps for us. We need to hear back from the community members. How unfair is it for me to come in here as a police officer in Toronto and come into your neighborhoods and your communities and say, this is what you need to do, without at least having a 5-minute conversation, which today we're gonna have the luxury to be able to have an hour conversation about finding out in your perspective, in your lens, what's happening on a daily basis. We think we know, and what I mean by we is the Toronto Police Service, all our different partner agencies, which we're lucky we have some of them here today. We think we have an understanding, but we don't know until we actually speak to you who actually live in this community to find out what are you going through. So what we'd like to do today is be able to present you an overview of what we think we know and kind of the direction we want to go. And during that overview, you're going to start to put together a puzzle in your own head, and your stories are going to start to fill into there. And I'm assuming that anybody who's here from the community, you're here because this is of interest to you. Am I wrong or am I right? Right. And is it of interest because you have some connection that's at an impact level? Have you been impacted by gangs in some point or another? Has it been family members? Has it been friends? Has it been kids in your community that have been impacted by gangs? Right. And as time goes on for all of us, we realize as we get a little bit older that, hey, there's more to this than just putting bad guys in jail or kids who make bad decisions. There's way more to this, and over the last 15 years, traditionally the Toronto Police Service has been heavily engaged in the enforcement aspect of things, but guess what? Have we put a dent in it? Sure. Could we be doing better? For sure, definitely sure. But the idea is we can always do this a little bit better. Maybe we're missing things. So that being said, when we did these town halls and when we started planning this over a year and a half ago, there's a lot of obstacles, and one of those obstacles we'll talk about back end is how do we engage impacted communities like yourself so that you feel you have value when you come to these type of places, to be able to have your voices heard, and heard in a way that you feel like it's respected and that it's going to mean something to everybody going forward. So for that, again, thank you for showing up. Let's give yourself a round of applause for showing up today. I see some smiles clapping for yourself. I do the same thing. It's cool. I clap for myself when I wake up some days. That's all good. Before we begin, really the big picture to this and this whole thing, and I should highlight it for you because my whole shtick with this and my partner who's unfortunately out there trying to organize for the food to come in is, listen, man, we work on honesty, all right? So I will be 100% honest with you and what I can be honest with. Some stuff I have to keep kind of secret squirrel because it's police stuff, but I'll be 100% honest with you with our perspectives and what we've learned and where we want to go going forward. And I hope that you can do the same with us. And understand that I have the cameras going now. That's going to be off when we have those conversations, all right? 100% that's going to be off because we really want to know and know that we'll be able to use our platforms as Toronto Police Service officers, as City of Toronto employees, as community housing employees, as Humber College and Guelph Humber representation, that we're going to be able to take your voices and put them into our chains and our platforms. That's the purpose of this. We need to know what's happening from you guys, put it in our platforms, and then spread it out to say, hey, at the very ground level, these are all the things that we're missing that we might not know about. That's so important for the people up top. But second to that, the point of these town halls was to connect you with social services as well as let you know all of the partners that we're trying to integrate into this. And when we talk about the partner groups, I'll get into how we identified who we have to integrate into this. But really it was to have some partners here, and they couldn't make it to all of them, because there's so many of these that we're doing throughout the city from east to west, north to south. But now we have that representation. So really from the partner agencies that are here that would like to spend 5 minutes and kind of talking about their element into this bigger picture, I'll give them a chance to speak now. So first I'll introduce Scott McKean from the City of Toronto. Scott has been with us from the beginning. We started this 3 years ago, and we kept it under wraps because we had to figure out what we had to do. So Scott, I'll give it over to you, man. If you have 5-10 minutes, kind of go over what you got to do and kind of how you guys view things. So.
Thank you. I'm sorry for my attire.
Okay, so now we'll get to the nitty gritty, right? So again, for those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet or haven't had a chance to talk to, Again, these cameras are only set up for this, all right? And right now it's just my portion of talking. It's not for me because I like to see my handsome face on TV. What happens is when we first got into this, and Jason and I were tasked in late 2016, actually, going into 2017, we were tasked with the idea of how do you get gang members out of gangs, all right? That was the question that we got asked. And the reason why we got asked that was our deputy chief, Jim Raymer, all right, who's up there. And for you who aren't familiar with policing operations or how it works in a corporate structure, I want you to imagine a big company, right? A massive company. And in that massive company, there's like a president, that's our chief of police. And then there's vice presidents, and we have 4 of them, and those are called deputy chiefs. And one of these vice presidents was Deputy Chief Jim Raymer, came down to Guns and Gangs, and he found Jason Kondo, who's been there for 4,000 years, as you can tell. And he said to Jason, he goes, listen, we have to figure out how do we get gang members out of gangs. And Jason said, I got to find the most handsome Indian guy I know. And that's how I got involved into it, right? So Jason called me up and said, listen, Ron, we want to figure this out. Are you interested? And for me, I was 150% interested because in my policing career, I've done the gamut from community stuff to hard enforcement stuff you see on TV. And I was back on the road when this opportunity came up, and I very much enjoyed being a constable on the street and responding to 911 calls. But this, for me, it struck a very familiar chord. And one of the things that got mentioned today was that this is our area of expertise. And if you were to ask me a year ago, 2 years ago, do I consider myself an expert in here, I would have entertained the thought of possibly yes. But as time goes on and we delved into the research, the more I learned about this issue, the more I learned I know nothing. The more I learned that realistically, nobody knows anything because the problem is much bigger than how do we stop kids getting into gangs or how do we get a gang member out of gangs or just gangs and a problem. I want you to think now and in this room, what do gangs do? What type of crimes do gangs do?
What don't they do?
Exactly my point. So for me to stand up here, myself and Jason to stand up here before you and say we're experts in gangs, I'm not an expert. I'm very well informed. I've taken the last 3 years, myself and Jay, to talk to every and anybody we can that's impacted by gangs to understand perspectives, to see into it. But by no means are we experts. But the point of this is to advocate that and say, if there was one single expert in this, there'd be one single solution. That's not the case at all. So today, really, with our town halls, we're going to cover off a few things, all right? And the big one is to raise awareness on gangs, to become aware of what the risk factors are associated to young people that lead them into gang lifestyle, how to connect you with services at a local level, and then how to identify and empower community leaders, and that's being you people in this room. All right, the fact that you showed up here today, that is our biggest challenge as a law enforcement, as a police service agency, is to get the people that we serve to show up whenever we say we want to be able to provide some information, but also have some insight. And so for that, the fact that you just showed up here today, in fact, shows to me that not only are you leaders, but you're champions. And champions are something very special. And for us, it's a great way to find who do we build up here in the community? Where do we take all the resources that we have access to, and who do we build up outside of us? The best way to deal with these type of problems is from the inside out. It doesn't work from the outside in. We just contain it. We can't contain it. We need to empower on the inside to find out what's happening and to grow champions from the inside out to set up pathways. Also, at the end of this, like I said, when the camera's off, we're going to have an open discussion. And in that discussion, it's about insight and it's about perspectives and understanding. It's going to give us an opportunity to hear what gangs look like for you every day, where you feel the impacts, as well as for us to be able to explain our perspective into gangs, as well as for our partner agencies, being the City of Toronto, neighborhood officers, community housing, to explain what they get on a daily basis. And by understanding each other's perspectives, we're going to now have a great understanding of what the global picture is. And secondary to that, we have a professor from Humber College in the back. It's Ann Corbold. And the reason we have Humber College here is all these town halls are funded from provincial grants. All right? And when we did a provincial grant, what we wanted to do is, when we first got on this idea of how do you get gang members out of gangs, we had to look first, right? We said, okay, well, how are we going to do this? So what Jay and I did was we found a bunch of police officers that we respected. We sat them down and we said, what would you do? And everybody kind of had an answer, but when we asked why you would do that, nobody had a real solid base. And we realized, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to work the way we think it's going to work, because if we think it's going to work that way, why wouldn't we have done it already? And what we found is that's called conventional wisdom. All right, so I want you to imagine in your household, if something is broken, let's say your fridge is broken and you ask your husband and he says, you know, it's broken. He says, did you hit it on the side? That's conventional wisdom, right? We've never really tested it to make sure it's worked. We didn't want to do that as a police agency. Instead, we wanted to say, well, what are the experts in the field saying? And there's many experts from all over the world. So we spent 6 months to a year looking all over Canada for academic publications to say, through people like Ann Corbel to Humber College, what independent academic agency full of educated people looked at what the police were doing and where was success? What's the point of us coming in here and trying things out when we don't even know if they're going to work? Let's take what's worked and drop it in. And then we expanded out to North America, and then we expanded out to the world. And we collected a whole bunch of information, and what we found is there is no answer to get a gang member out of gangs. But there is a lot of solutions, with an S at the end, to prevent young people from getting into gangs in the first place. We realize that is where we need to focus our efforts as a collective group. So really, part of this is to identify the gaps where we can support that. You got a handout with you? That handout, we had some conversations prior to this kicking off, and this is kind of how it goes, is the first hour is kind of just feeling out, waiting for the food to come in. That handout gives you some basic information like different types of gangs, what behavior people do that we know academically that we can source that might lead them onto the gang path, so that when you're looking at it, it's almost like looking at it and say, what symptoms do I have, right? So anybody who's been sick before, and you go to WebMD and you type in all your symptoms and it gives you something, we kind of have the same thing, but for kids that are on the path to gang membership. As well as it gives you online resources, and myself and Detective Kondo, our contact information is on the back there, right? You got email and phone number. By all means, you can send us a text message, you can call us, you can email us, and if you have any follow-up questions, we can guide you through the process. But I'll ask you here, gangs, right? We kind of know what it is, but we don't know what it is. So I'll ask you here, because definitions absolutely matter. What is the purpose of a gang in your experience? And it could be from movies, it could be from what you see on, in your neighborhood, it could be what you heard from other people. But if I were to ask you, what is the purpose of a gang, what would you say?
Well, it's like a family to some people.
Yeah, so family, right? And what else? You were going to say something?
No, I was agreeing with her.
Family, right?
Yeah.
What else? Does anybody else have anything to that?
I don't really have gangs in my area.
Oh, right. So you said, I don't really have gangs in the area.
Yeah.
But we had mentioned something like our family. So you were laughing, you're giggling. What makes you giggle?
Well, because, to tell you the truth, I live in Toronto Community Housing, directly behind 41 Division. I think, I don't know how to put it, but I think Toronto Community Housing helps to foster gangs.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So that's a very interesting perspective, right? And we'll get into it. So we're looking at Toronto Community Housing fosters gangs, all right? But that's not the truth. There's way more objective risk factors to look at, that sometimes that perspective is the easy one to say because it's right in front of you, right? And inherently as people, we want to blame somebody, right? Something bad happens, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? You want to blame somebody, or do you want to say, ugh, is there more to this? We don't have time, it's a busy time. So we want to blame people because it feels good, right? What brings people together quicker than anything else?
Boredom for kids.
Food.
Boredom, food. What else? Common enemy. Common enemy. What brings together countries more than anything else? Look at the United States right now, right? Today, out of all the days, horrible day, right? The United States has never been more divisive, at least that's what the media is portraying, than any other time in history. But I want you to look
Together today.
18 years ago today, all right? 18 years ago today, 9/11 happened, and I remember shortly after, a month after, I went to New York, I went to Queens, I went to Jamaica Avenue, where I used to go shopping all the time because I got family out there. Before school, they got all the bootleg clothing. So I'd fly down to Queens for the day. My mom worked for the airline, so it only cost me like $70. And I remember like a month or two after 9/11, I go down to New York. I take a day flight. I fly in the morning. I go to Queens. I see my aunt and uncle, and then I go into Jamaica Avenue to buy my clothes. And you could not look in any direction and not see American flags everywhere. It was just jammed there. What brought that country together? A common enemy, right? And today, what we have is a group of people who might be potentially looking at things. And that's why it's so easy to blame things. It's so easy to say it's that person's fault or that agency's fault. What does that do for the solution? What happened now? What's happening now in the United States? Is that over? Is that war over? No. How many more victims have been created?
We're fighting all the time.
Right, it fights all the time. And we're looking at 18 years later where the superpower, the land of opportunity, which literally every country in the world wants to come to the United States to grow and to have a future because it's the land of opportunity. You can grow a business there, no problem. If you got the grit, you got the knowledge, the work ethic, you can do it. But now look at it, 18 years, turmoil, right? And divisiveness. Well, That's not what we want. The point of this is we look at Toronto and we say it's a fantastic city because it's the most diverse city in the world. Now, the word diverse comes from the word divide, right? And we need to keep that in perspective, because the point of this is to say, yes, we're all individual, we're all unique, but for matters like this, when we talk about kids, shooting kids and kids recruiting kids into gangs, we can't be divided. This has to come together into an integrated fashion with a common goal. And in order to integrate, I cannot integrate with everybody if I'm going to shift blame. I can't do it. It's impossible to do. So the idea is to get over the potential what ifs and who's to blame and focus on solutions and focus on I statements. Right? What can I do? How can I contribute? Where can I improve? What can I do more of? But when it comes down to the purpose of gangs, we got to look at what gangs are, because here's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to, as law enforcement or community housing or community member, and we had this conversation right early on, and that's why I said I'm going to remember this, because I don't want to see a group of kids hanging out here and say they're part of a gang. Why would I do that? Labeling is a real thing. Right? Imagine you in a relationship, if you had a spouse or a partner, and they said, you always cheat on me, and you don't. How long are you gonna be loyal to that person if every day for the course of a year you get told I cheat on you? You're gonna cheat eventually at some point. Well, we don't want to do that with gang members either. We don't want to do it with kids that we say, you're part of a gang, and they're like, I'm not part of a gang. But meanwhile, we say it as a police agency, these guys are gang members. Then we go to talk to our friends, community housing, they say they're gang members. And then we go to City of Toronto, these are gang members, drop in resources to help them. We don't know. So we have to look at what actually is the purpose of a gang. And all across the world, the purpose of a gang is three things: deal drugs, control territory, and collect debt. All right, so we have to look at what are the different things that make kids get into gangs. What is the purpose of a gang at the very soul core? If I were to give you a mission statement of a gang, I'm going to start this brand new company. I'm going to say, what is our mission statement as a gang? Control territory, collect debt, distribute drugs. That is the business of gangs. And unless we have kids doing that, they are not a gang. Or any activity that supports that, being weapons, drugs, firearms, even human trafficking, which is supported by drug use. Unless we can tie that to those three, they're not a gang member. And we don't want to say that is a gang classification. The handout you have gives you the different types of groups that might be of concern for you, as well as the different classifications of types. And it's important to know what we're dealing with. And the reason is imagine you go to your doctor and you say, doctor, I'm not feeling good. And he never even asks you, what's wrong? He says, you're not feeling good? I got the prescription for you. Here you go, amoxicillin. You're like, you didn't even ask me what's wrong. I didn't even get a chance to, my elbow hurts, amoxicillin. We can't do the same thing. We have to really be able to diagnose what we're dealing with in order to apply and prescribe a proper solution. Now I'll ask you this: who joins a gang? And this is my favorite part, okay? And this is where we're gonna have to be honest. I told you at the beginning, we will be as honest as we can be with you, right? And when I ask you who joins a gang, I'll paint it to you like this. If we all in this room, who here wants to help stop a kid from joining a gang and potentially killing somebody or getting killed himself? Put your hand up if that's you, if you want to help out. You want to help out? All right, committed. That's a great cause. That's the reason you're here. Free food in the back to look at this handsome face. I got it, I know. All right, so I'm going to tell you this. We have 1 hour. 1 hour, and I have to do two things. I need to find an area to go to find this gang member that I'm going to help. And I'm going to give him this pill, and when I give him this magic pill, he's going to take it, and he's not going to be a gang member. He's going to grow up. He's going to live a fantastic life. He's going to be a leader in the community. He's going to be a billionaire, come back, grow economies in the community. He's going to be a champion. I'm going to give him this pill, but I got to find this person. There's two things I got to do right now off of the bat. Where do I go? What does this person look like? It's honesty time. No such thing as a bad thing. And I need to know your experience. I want to know what you guys think. So what do I do? Where do I go? First, give me an area. Where do I go to find a gang member? We got 1 hour. We're going to change his life. Could be anywhere, but I don't have anywhere or anything. I got an hour. I have to find this. We're going to change his life. All of us together. We're going to change this person's life, but I need you to tell me where to go. So where do I go in the city of Toronto to find this gang member where I'm going to change their life? We are going to change their life.
I don't know. I can find them on the church.
Church?
Well,
Okay, any place, but I can't go any place.
church.
Guys, listen. This is uncomfortable, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's absolutely uncomfortable. In order to find the solution to this, we have to be honest in how we feel. And here's the thing. Part of the honesty is you cannot judge somebody else for how they feel. That's not the point of this. The point isn't for somebody to say an area and everybody say, oh, how dare you. Listen, solutions and I statements. Solutions and I statements. I need to know. Guys, time is running out. We have 58 minutes.
Go downtown.
Downtown, where downtown? Give me an intersection.
By St. Mike's Hospital.
St. Mike's Hospital?
Yeah, they
So what's by St. Mike's? Oh, Vanoli Walk. Everybody familiar with Vanoli Walk area? Yeah.
It could be my home.
It could be in your home. Yeah, but listen, we're not on that. We're not on the area of it could be. I need to, guys. 55 minutes. Okay, St. Mike's.
You know, I watch drug deals run down there.
Okay, drug deals.
Every night they have their run.
You see it. Okay, so now perfect. Okay, St. Mike's Hospital. She sees drug deals back and forth. Perfect. Now I know where to go. Now I got to listen. Downtown Toronto. There's a lot of people moving back and forth. Right? It's a crazy place.
Oh, it's nuts.
I got to find somebody. I got 55 minutes to give somebody this pill. What does this person look like?
Problem is,
What? Sorry.
young or old.
Look like me. What does that mean? They could, but we're not in the area of could. We need specifics. I need to know. I need to know what this person looks like. I got this pill. I got 54 minutes. Time is running out. We got St. Mike's. We know there's dope being dealt there. I'm going to change this kid's life. We're going to change it. I'm going to do it with your help. But guys, I need more direction. I need to know what this person looks like.
But if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you going to find them?
That's the point. I need your help. We already put our hands up that we already agreed here unanimously we're here to help kids. We already agreed unanimously that we're here because we have some level of impact with gangs. All right? We do. We all have some level of experience, whether it's on movies, whether it's in real life, whether it's assumption. It doesn't matter. The point is we have to have an open and honest conversation here because as a team, as an integrated family with a solution-focused idea, I got to know what I'm looking for. We got to get out of the uncomfortable. We have to absolutely get uncomfortable in this conversation. It's not fun for me, but this is a necessity. So what does this person look like? Let's start with skin color. Let's make it super uncomfortable here.
I'll go white.
Okay, white guy or girl? Okay, sex. Is it a guy or girl? White guy on a bike?
Yeah.
Okay, and describe the clothing to me.
Clothing?
Yeah.
Jeans, white blue shirt.
Okay, and then,
Shoes.
and how old is this white guy on a bike?
50s.
He's in his 50s? Dealing dope?
Yeah.
That's pretty out there, but I like it, right? I like it.
And he passes it to another
I
person.
like it.
Then they meet in the park, they pass it out, and he gives them more to run.
All right, so we got that. All right, we're gonna run with this. All right, we're gonna run with this. So now I go to St. Mike's. I find
Watching it for a month.
you've been watching for a month, right? But now you got some good intel, right? And that's a whole different type. We're gonna pretend like you don't have that. But now we're gonna go to St. Mike's, and we're all just gonna agree that okay, that's the 50-year-old riding a bike downtown Toronto. That's a gang member. Are we good with that? Is that who I'm gonna put this pill on? Are you guys sure? Because I have now 40 minutes, and I'm gonna put this pill in this guy's mouth, and this pill is gonna change his life and make him a leader in the community. We're gonna change this gang member's life forever.
That's one.
Is this who I'm putting the pill into? Yes or no? You guys have to let me know. Time is running out.
Maybe Church Street,
Church Street?
Church Street and Wellesley.
Church and Wellesley? Why? Okay, now describe who's that. Is that the same guy at Church and Wellesley?
Or Church and Queen.
Oh, Church and Queen. Now, is that same guy on the bike there? Same guy. Is he on the bike, that 50-year-old? And is he the guy we're going to give this pill to? I need to know.
Maybe I'm not sure.
Maybe I'm not sure.
It's
Oh,
only one person, we've got hundreds and hundreds.
yeah. Okay, guys, we got 10 seconds. We got 10 seconds now. And if I don't hear anything, this guy's getting this pill. And I need you to be okay with that. I need you to be 100% okay with it because guess what? We only got one. We only got one. And if this is the guy I'm going to give the pill to, I'm okay with it if you're okay with it because I need to know if this is the collective, is this the experience we're going to have? Is this how we're going to frame this conversation?
That should be a man, of course, huh?
So it's going to be a man, right? It's well, she said, yeah, it's an old guy, 50s, riding his bicycle downtown Toronto by St. Mike's. In the city of Toronto,
No woman.
where there was 4 or 5 shootings last night. No, I got it. I'm just making sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We're good? 10.
Well, for me, I can't tell you to give, I could be judging wrongfully, so I need more.
I need more. That's what I'm asking. I need more. And you guys are a collective and we all have impacts, but I'm not hearing so I'm good with this. 9, 8.
Our black guys,
Black guy?
yeah, in
Okay.
50s.
50s? Okay, 50s black guy in Church and Queen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we have 2, right? Sorry?
How do you make that decision
Ah,
to give it
see?
to one person?
This is the uncomfortable part, but that's okay. Don't worry about that, right? Don't question it because that's his experiences, right? You got your own, he's got his, and the idea is we're going to stay solutions focused. We're going to drive for answers. So now I find a black guy, Queen and Wellesley, Queen and Church, in his 50s. Now, what does this guy look like? Tell me, I need more descriptions because there's a lot of colored people downtown Toronto, and I got to know who's going to get this pill. Guys, we have 6 seconds. I need to know. 5, 4.
Maybe full of beard.
Sorry?
How about a black guy, 16 to 22, with dreadlocks and tattoos?
Okay, black guy, 16, 22, dreadlocks and tattoos.
Black.
Sorry?
I said, how come all these
That's the first time I've heard anybody say a black kid that age, right? Yeah. Okay, great. So now we're on it, right? So for the sake of this, we'll use that gentleman's. Now I go there. I go to Church and Wellesley, and I got this pill, and I find that guy that looks at the description, and I grab him, and I say to him, "I'm going to change your life. You're at risk of gang involvement. I'm going to give you this pill. We're going to save your life." And he looks to me, and what does he say?
Up yours, buddy.
He goes, "What the hell are you talking about?" Yeah. That is the absolute point of this exercise, all right? The absolute point of this exercise is to acknowledge that our experiences are not concrete experiences. And they do not mean that how we have one experience is what it's like for everybody. It's not. It's different. You had a different experience. You had a different experience. Mr. King in the back had a different experience. And all of us have different experiences. And the point is, there's validity to all of them. So you cannot and you should not be able to be afraid to voice up what your experiences are. With this going forward, when we have the off-the-record conversation, we need to have shared experiences as law enforcement. We need to know what is happening in your experiences. It does not mean that we are going to subjectively go after black kids 16 to 22 with dreadlocks because that's what you told us. That by no means means it. And when we got into this, those were the two biggest issues that we had to face as Toronto Police. Where do we go to find kids that are likely to get into gangs? And what do they look like? And what we'd found through research was we'd found risk factors, right? And these are the risk factors which are, they're back here, you can't see them, all right? But I'll bring them up for you. And we have cards, and on our website, they're all on there. And what these risk factors are, they came from 2007, Public Safety Canada, put out this publication that's been referenced worldwide. And what it says is there's 36 risk factors over 5 different categories. And the more of these risk factors that you check off, the more likely you are to become a gang member. And an important thing to note in that, it does not mention sex, it does not mention race, it does not mention age, and it doesn't mention religion or ethnicity. None of those academically have been proven to be risk factors for gang involvement. So now we had an amazing way, and Jason's got the cards, he'll be handing them out that break it down for you. But now we had an amazing way to identify kids that were on the path to gang involvement. And here's the thing, those risk factors, they don't pop up at the same time, but they carry over. So the first risk factor that gets involved with a kid, and I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you, as I tell you this story, if I'm telling it to you and you say to me, Ron, that's not my experience, you're wrong, this isn't true, I can't relate to it, by all means tell me, all right, because I got to know.
Maybe like a Jane and Finch area,
Yeah.
or Regent Park,
Yeah,
maybe more gangs.
more gangs, maybe, right? But I'm going to talk about these risk factors now. So the first category in those risk factors, you got that card, is take a look at family, all right? There's about 9 risk factors in the family category, and if you look at them, I want you to look at it and ask yourself, is there anything there that surprises you? And I want you to keep in mind that the end result here of the person who suffers from these risk factors is gang membership or a life of crime or death. They either become a murderer, they murder people, they get involved in drug trafficking, they do all these things, they end up in a gang involvement. Nothing really, right? Nothing surprises you. Now I'm gonna tell you a story, and that story is one that's gonna go through these risk factors, all right? So I want you to imagine a single mother living in community housing, all right? She's in her mid-20s when she has 5 kids. All right, and the middle kid is a problem for her. And she lives in community housing by herself, no father around, no partner around. She has 5 kids, they live in one bedroom and she lives in another. All right, and every day she wakes up and she struggles. And when she wakes up, she notices at the age of 3, her middle child has got horrible temper. Right? He's very hard to deal with. And what he does is he realizes that, hey, when I do naughty things, mom pays attention to me. So for the parents in the room, I want you to think when your kids were that age, if you have kids that age or kids going to that age, when you're there washing your dishes and you hear the kids playing, everything's okay, right? You hear them. What happens when you don't hear anything? Right? So this mom's washing dishes, she doesn't hear anything, she goes into the room, she kicks the door open, and there's this kid doing naughty things. So mom yells at him, right? And now this kid, and this is something we looked at psychologically, children operate between the ages 0 to 7 at what's called a theta wave in their brain frequency. And it's almost a state of hypnosis. And what they're doing in this 0 to 7 age category is they're gathering information, not to how to succeed in life, but what do I need to be to survive in life? It's a very primal instinct. So now this kid really is looking early on and saying, okay, when I am doing naughty things, and this is not a conscious decision he's making, he's a kid. realizes very quick, when I do naughty things, I get what? I get attention from mom. Right? So now this 3-year-old goes in, he becomes 6 years old, and he goes to school, right? And he gets to school, and I want you to think about that 3-year-old who's now 6 years old. He spent the first 0 to 6 years of his life craving attention, realizing if I do this action, I get this reward. The action being negative stuff, the reward being attention from mom. Now he goes to school. Who's the replacement for mom in school? A teacher, right? And now I want you to think back, if you were in kindergarten, if you can remember, or if it was yesterday for some of the younger people, wasn't there that one kid in class that everybody was like, listen, man, I want nothing to do with that guy or girl? I had 2 of those people in my class. I still remember their names. I want nothing to do with them. And in this day and age, same as my day and age, what happens to that one kid? They get a special teacher assigned to them. They get the attention. Everybody stops. We put that kid in a corner. We give him specialized treatment, right? We try to bolster that kid up. And now this kid realizes, hey, man, if I do more naughty things at school, I'm getting the same attention I'm getting at home. So this is a behavior that gets rewarded. And now that kid at the age of 6 now all of a sudden becomes 9 years old, right? And now he's 9 years old and we're in the peer group risk factor category. And I want you to imagine here yourself. When I was 9, I was out on my own, right? My parents were like, get out of the house, got a lot of energy, come home before the street lights come on. That was kind of our rule. And I'd go out. And now for me, as a father to 2 kids, my kids cannot go anywhere without me there hiding in the bushes. All right, you're stuck. I got a GPS on you, you don't even know about it. I'm gonna know everything about you guys. But in the city of Toronto, is it unusual to see a 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old playing on their own for a couple hours after school? All the time, right? Now I want you to imagine that same kid, 3, 6, now he's 9 years old and he's out there. And he's already kind of got this perspective of the world on how to survive, and it's if I do naughty things, I get the attention I want. Now he's playing outside, and what type of kids is he running into? Similar or different? Same. So now for the first time, this 9-year-old, first time, finds a group of people just like him. Right? And he says, man, these are my people. Finally, isolation my whole life, finally, I found people just like me. And then from the ages 0 to 9, 9 to 15, stuff starts to take a very different turn. I want you to imagine that same 9-year-old kid. Now we're in the individual risk factor category. 9 to 15, it's a big age jump, right? 6 years in that age. Now I want you to imagine that same kid, the age 8 or 9, he's playing outside, all his friends have bikes. Mobility is a big thing, so his mom, for whatever reason, gets him a bike and says, here you go, kid. You know, you've been kind of good this year, so here's your reward. And he's been good because he's been out making friends, right? So they kind of get up to no good. Gets him a bike, and what happens is this kid's out there playing with friends that are not like him, and gets his bike stolen. He comes home, and I want you to imagine, keep in mind, mother of 5, community housing, no support anywhere else. Manages to get her kid a bike. The kid comes home at the age of 8 or 9 and says, Mom, my bike got stolen. What does mom say to the kid?
Probably gets angry.
Yeah, angry. What would you say?
It's your fault.
It's your fault. You idiot. It's your fault. You know how much I did to get this bike for you? And you're so careless, you got this stolen? That kid's crushed, right? Manages a year later, mom says, you know what? All right, he did a little better this year, I'm gonna get him another bike, and that bike gets stolen again. Right? And both times the police get called. It's the city of Toronto, man. We have millions of people here, probably millions of bicycles. How often do we find a stolen bicycle? Unless it's by accident, a lot of times we don't. All right, so they've already made 2 reports to police. We can't do much. Right? Now, all of a sudden, at the age of 10, 11, 12, this kid gets reported missing multiple times by his mother, who says, I don't know, I haven't seen him all day. I haven't seen him yesterday. I don't know. Then this kid magically shows up. All right, the first time he goes missing, he shows up a day later. The second time, we find out as police where he is. We manage to find him, and they're up to no good. The third time, they're potentially doing drugs at the age of 12. All right, now this kid goes home, and then what do we have at 13 and 14 and 15? A spike in violent crimes. Extortion, robbery, weapons offenses, drug trafficking. Now we have a 15-year-old who's a self-admitted gang member. All right, now that's the individual risk category, which is only 4. And then now this 15-year-old becomes 18. And at 18, the front page of the chief would call our office and would say, what does the program look like? And as comfortable it was for Jay and I, we'd have to say there is no program. And here's why. I want you to look at the 5 risk factor categories, all right? We have family, school, peer group, individual, and community. Now, if we put those as individual colors, yellow, black, purple, blue, orange, doesn't matter. How many different combinations of 5 different colors can I make? Anybody know? 3,125. Now that's just the categories. So for me to say I have a single solution to potentially 3,125 different problems, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be on an island somewhere in Barbados. I'd be rich. I'd be a billionaire, trillionaire, bajillionaire. That's just those 5 categories. Those 36 risk factors, when we look at mathematically what that looks like in terms of the potential of problems incorporated into each other, it's 150 unvigatillion. And I'm 90% sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. But that's the number 150 with 69 zeros after it. How hard is that to deal with? Extremely hard. Now, once we determine that and we figured out, okay, this is way bigger than a personal experience, this is way bigger than seeing a drug dealer and saying all people that look like this or that way, we had to look at social issues, all right? And that became a big impact point. Now, I want you to think about this. When it comes down to our name, and it says Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force, we did that on purpose. Our goal at the end of this is for Toronto Police Service to be not on there. It's just supposed to say Integrated Gang Prevention Task Force, and I'll tell you why. That's 0 to 18. How many people are impacted by that kid? How many people are seeing the risk factors from 0 to 18? And why is it that we have to let kids recruit kids, and kids shoot kids, and kids get into drug dealing? Why is it that we can tolerate it all the way up to the 18, and at that point we all get together and say, enough is enough, and we expect one solution for that many problems? That's not the truth, nor should that be the answer. Instead, the answer has to be an integrated group. So let's go over who's impacted by it. 0 to 3, who's impacted? Where does that kid live? He's home, right? But where does he live? That kid in particular. Community housing?
Could be anywhere.
Community housing is impacted in this particular story, right? Kid lives in community housing. They're impacted by it. They're seeing it. The family's there, right? They're seeing it. Okay, perfect.
Single mom.
Single mom, right? Now let's say that kid, all of a sudden he goes to school. Who's impacted there?
School?
Schools. Schools are impacted. Teachers are impacted by it, right? And then that kid and new kids, other families, and then we go through, and then we see that kid at 9, and now he's out in the neighborhood, and who's impacted there? Everybody. Local businesses, local economies, local agencies, everybody's impacted at that point. I want you to think about this too, this is before we move on to the impacted stakeholder groups. In certain parts of the city of Toronto that have a heavy gang presence, heavy gang involvement, if I were to open up there, how long would it stay in business?
Probably not long.
Why?
Well, people don't have the money, number one.
Yeah. Yep.
It's poverty, right?
Yeah, great, right? So not long. And then if you go to any of these low equity neighborhoods in the city of Toronto, and that's kind of how we ended up in different areas, was when we looked at low equity neighborhoods, what they are is the city of Toronto divvied up the city into 140 different neighborhoods. 31 of those were deemed low equitable areas or neighborhood improvement areas. And the good news is, come 2020, there's going to be a ton of investment into these type of communities to get them to a standard above average, to help mitigate these risk factors. Now for us, that was perfect, because when we did a bit of a cost analysis, what we know about gangs, they're kind of in these areas, which totally supports the first risk factor being social disorganization. It totally ties into that. So we knew we got a place to go, right? So we're all impacted by it. Now let's look at that kid, 9 to 15, goes to school, commits crimes, gets incarcerated, so gets arrested by police, we're impacted. Goes to court, they're impacted. Goes on probation, they're impacted. Might get parole, they're impacted, right? Might have to go to see social service, they're impacted.
And then they're back in society.
They're back in society, they're impacted. So when we looked at it, we said, all right, we can't do this by ourselves. And we found a model in the United States called the comprehensive gang model, which is the gold standard in the world. And part of us doing this is this: nobody in the world has been able to successfully implement that model. I'll tell you why. Ego. Absolute ego. Everybody who was impacted thought they had the solution. What I can tell you is over the last 3 years, when we made partnerships with people like Scott, with Humber College, Guelph Humber University, our framework from the beginning has been, in order to participate, you cannot have an ego. We can't do this, because for us to actually do this in the city of Toronto, we'd be the first place in the world to do it. And not only would this solve gang problems, this would solve school shootings, this would solve sex trafficking at a young age, it would solve drug dealing, drug overdoses, fentanyl. It would solve a host of problems if we can just get over the ego, all of us. Agencies, organizations, different levels of government, just get over the ego of what can we do and what are we getting out of this, and focus on what is the end result here. Solutions and I statements. Right? So we have 5 core strategies that we really sit on, and this whole massive framework sits on these 5 strategies.
What is ego?
Sorry?
Ego. What is ego?
Ego is like if I were to come in here and I said, I'm the strongest in this room, and I walk around and be like, don't you know who I am? That's a bit of an ego. Or if I said I'm the smartest in this room, that would be an ego. But that might not be the truth, right? Jamie might have a PhD in something I have no idea about, so he'd technically be smarter than me. But thankfully it's not the case. I'm the smartest guy in the room. Anyways, so so this is one of the 5 pillars that we kind of have to sit on, and not pillars, more of the framework is community mobilization, which is exactly what we're doing today. Is coming into communities that are impacted by gangs and finding out your perspective as well as identifying leaders. Who can we support? Who can we grow resources into? You have way more connections in your community than I will ever have. The point is, we don't need to have those. You need to have that. What can we do to bolster you? Second to that is opportunities provision. I want you to think about that, all right? That's example. The reason I bring that up is there's benefits. There's no reason. I didn't just pick because I said this is a good one. This is a high-paying job. They have benefits. They pay for school. They're a franchise chain, and there's a clear career development path. And unless you physically see that, and you're that 9-year-old kid as a potential option for you, what is the expectation? Do we just expect that the kids and families in these areas just understand how to get a PhD and how to grow a business? Is that a real expectation we should have? If they physically don't see it, do you know it exists? A lot of people if they don't see that as an option, and the reality is for Jay and I who debriefed thousands of gang members, they do not travel past the city block. They will stay in that block for 20 years and never know that just over the street is a brand new area.
Oh.
So what is their scope of the world? What is their scope of opportunities? It's none of it, right? So the idea is we have some other things happening for an opportunities provision. And what that is, I want you to think of Detroit. Everybody's familiar with Detroit, right? It went through a massive recession. Everything shut down. Warren Buffett, who's the 4th richest man in the world, came in and bought up 90% of Detroit. And when all his investor friends came in and they said to him, what are you doing? This place is dead. His response was, vultures see the opportunity in death. I want you to think about that. This guy saw something nobody else saw. He saw an opportunity. Everybody else gave up on this place. He saw an opportunity and he brought that city back to life.
Wow.
And for us, we are expanding our branch to find economic leaders in the GTA and to say, what are the opportunities that we're missing here to grow an economy? On the 28th of September, in one of our police divisions, we've reached out to 10 industry leaders in economics and business, and they're being brought in for 2 hours to give us their insights into what are the opportunities that we're all missing economically. How can we bolster these areas through activity that, as a law enforcement agency, we have no background in. I don't know how to grow an economy. I don't know how to do that stuff. I know how to arrest people. I know how to talk to people. I know how to drive fast. Some of us know how to work out. But to grow an economy, we can't do that. We need experts. So we have experts coming in, all volunteer-based. The other one is social intervention, right? And it's kind of getting into the people that are already in the justice system, the gang members that are already getting arrested. We have organizational change and development, and I want you to know at the tail end of this, in about 5-10 minutes when we get to the very back end of this, and we have the informal discussion, mics off, cameras are off. What Jay and I do is we take this, we put this into a notes package, and we protect everybody. We want to hear what's happening with you. That way, nothing can come back to you if you don't want it to come back to you. But what we do is we take that within Toronto Police Service as well as other organizations, and we say, these are the perspectives we're missing. These are the areas we can improve. These are the gaps that we're missing so that we can improve our organization as a whole. And the very last one is suppression, all right? And what suppression means is enforcement. And make no bones about it, all over the world, the number one way to combat gang violence, who knows what it is? Who wants to take a guess? Number one way to combat gang violence. You arrest them. You hold them accountable for what they do, 100% of the time. So us as law enforcement, while we might be leading this discussion in terms of what can we do together as a whole, 10% of the gang population is responsible for 100% of the criminal decision making. There's a study done of a gang in Los Angeles, 300 gang members. What they did is they realized 270 of the gang members, or 90% of the gang, had an average gang membership of 1 to 2 years. And they left on their own. And when they left on their own, they had a whole bunch of personal reasons. They were a victim of a crime. Their friend got shot and killed. They found a girlfriend or boyfriend. They moved. They got a university and school. And in all the cases in this particular gang, no one gang member faced any negative repercussions for leaving. In fact, they were encouraged to go. The remaining 10%, after the age of 21, were gang members for life, and they organized 100% of the criminal activity in that gang. So we took that, and that was mimicked everywhere. And what we said as Toronto Police is we want to identify who that 10% is to hold them accountable for what they do. to hold them accountable for not recruiting other kids into gangs, for not drugging young girls and forcing them into sex trafficking, for not dealing drugs on the street and causing drug overdoses or doing daytime shootings. We need to hold that 10% accountable. But in the process, when we can identify that 90%, our goal is to get them out sooner than later. If they're going to get out, what can we do as a law enforcement agency to connect them with social need services to mitigate those risk factors to get them out sooner than later? And we have ways of doing it. But our role in this needs to be focused on relationship development and enforcement. We need to find the worst of the worst and hold them accountable. Now, when we expanded on this, and I want you to think of this as kind of the mixing pot, in the mixing pot are 4 pillars. And this is where we added onto this from the United States, and we kind of took it to a different direction with lots of consultation. Our gang strategy and for the integrated group is, number 1 is educating. So it's teaching people what we've learned. It's sharing insights and presenting it in a package that we can share, as well as receiving information back. So the education isn't a one-way stream for us, it's a 2 ways. It's constantly engaging communities to find out what's happening with you so we can get educated. That is a 24-hour job. We need to stay up to date as best as possible because there are great ideas of stuff that are happening that have maximum impact. Actually, Rico King back there, he's a filmmaker from Houston, Texas, who did an awesome documentary called Tears in the Bayou. Got over 1 million hits on YouTube. He's up here now, he's a Toronto guy, he's filming a documentary on gangs here. And Rico, when we get to that group, I'm so impressed with the no-shoot zones. You guys got to hear this. This is incredible. And unless we had a relationship and we're willing to listen, we would never be able to implement those strategies. That education is us being educated. We're going to find out from Rico what he did so we can learn how to do this here. And what I mean by we, I don't mean we, I mean by what can we teach you to do? Because Rico is not a police officer. But what he did in Houston is unbelievable. And I'll let him speak to that. The other side of this is prevention, exactly what we spoke about. How do we find that kid from 0 to 15, 0 to 18? How do we mitigate them, plug those risk factors? Who's the best to take care of that? And then intervention. Intervention is a piece where it says gang prevention task force because prevention is where we want to sit. But intervention is a key piece for us in law enforcement. All right, well, I want you to think about this. That 15-year-old kid, or when he's 13 or 12 and he gets arrested and he gets introduced in the legal system, we're doing our job. We're supposed to do that. That's 100% what we do. We're not apologizing for that ever. That's what we're supposed to do. But when he gets brought into the legal system, it gets lost in translation. We have elections coming up. How much of that conversation is going to be based off of prevention? How much of it is going to be based on intervention? How many of them are going to talk about the kids that are already involved in the criminal justice system and what are we going to do for them? How many of them are going to talk about the 18 and up who have no services at all? That intervention piece is crucial for us in law enforcement. Absolutely crucial for us to connect with jails, probation, and parole, and we need to take care of that, but that's an absolute element. And the very last one is what I spoke about, is finding that 10% and holding them accountable for what they do. We talked about the stakeholders being everybody involved, and I'll tell you, we'll skip this. These are all the groups that we've continuously had conversations with over the last 2 years. Toronto Police Service, City of Toronto, Ministry of the Attorney General, Ministry of Children and Youth Services, Community Safety Correctional Services, both the Catholic and the Public School Board, Safe and Caring Schools Toronto, CAMH for the mental health component, victim and witness protection, faith-based organizations being local religious groups, religious institutions, employment programs and community residents, businesses, hospitals, and the media. Yeah, 100% we engage the media. Why do we engage the media? What picture do they paint? They paint a pretty bad picture. And you know what they do? They sometimes, and this is something we're working on, they label communities. Right? This community's not good. I want you to think if you live in one of these impacted communities, what happens to your property value? It goes down. If they say this is a gang impact, it goes down. So we need to incorporate. And this is just a list of 16, but we have about 25 that we're actively working with to get on the same page. And this requires zero ego. This requires responsibility, acceptance, and adopting our individual roles and being good with it. We have a website. We'll get to that later. You can go on there. The point of this was to teach you a tool. Unfortunately, I don't have an internet connection, which I'm okay with. But what I'll tell you is if you go onto our website, torontogangprevention.ca, we do not track anything. And what I mean by track anything, some people think if I log on, it's going to tell who logged on. We don't track any of that stuff. Yeah, we don't track anything. It's independent. That's why it's on a Toronto Police website if you go there. It has our logo only because right now we're the ones leading the conversation. The goal is in ideally another year or two that gets removed and we have buy-in from everybody. But if you go on there, there's 2 ways. It says, how can I help? One is we show you how to do it on your own in 60 seconds. You have the risk factors, which is the biggest part. What are the things I should be looking for? The second part is, how do I find things to mitigate these risks or add protective factors? And there's simple mapping tools. City of Toronto has one, Toronto Police Service has one, and the province of Ontario has one. It's so easy. You go in there, you have your risk factors, you punch in your postal code. It gives you a list and a pop-up of all the agencies where you live, where you can go and get help with it, any involvement from anybody else. So if you don't want to call the police to get your kid or a family member or loved one that you're concerned about into needs, you could do it yourself. It's so easy to do. The other part is, if it's a little bit more complicated, Jay and I just act as advisors. We don't need to know the person's name. We don't even ask for the name. What we ask is from the public, all we ask is, give us the person's sex, their rough age, and what risk factors apply, and we need some contact information. Not even to that person. If you're gonna be the pipeline, you're gonna be the conduit to say, I can do this, we'll build you up and let us figure out and do the legwork for you. That being said, what I'd like to do is, guys, take 5-10 minutes, grab something to eat. We're gonna shut down everything now. If we can arrange these chairs in a big circle, and we can have a real conversation. If you don't have time, you wanna leave, you're not comfortable, by all means you can, but for us, the last one we did last week, the best information we got out of this was in that circle. And judgment-free, I statements and solutions focused. So on behalf of Jay, myself, the inspector, all these other members of Toronto Police and the community partners, thank you for showing up today. I encourage you to stay, grab a bite to eat. Let's have a circle discussion, and we can hear from people like Rico, who did some amazing things in Houston, and learn how we can do it. So thank you, everybody. Hang tight, grab something to eat. Thank you.